Hi everyone, welcome back. I have plenty of videos on this already, but I had a look at them. Some of them I've made a couple of years ago, and I've had the chance to think as I'm getting used to making actual videos about what do I really want on the video? What do I really want for the people who are watching now? Thanks for all the wonderful comments I'm receiving. It's very encouraging. They keep coming every day, and there's a lot of them, and I really appreciate it. Now, I always put a playlist at the bottom of this video, just underneath in the comments. There's a playlist for this topic if you want more on it, and there'll be a playlist on something else that's maybe related to it or something that's useful at that level, depending on what you're learning at school at this time. So here we go. If I expand that, most people are okay. You can go watch, there's a separate playlist I've got on expanding brackets. You can go have a look at that. But I'm going to go through it fairly quick as if you know what you're doing and expecting you do. Now, there are a lot of methods. There's what's called FOIL, there's eyebrow methods, and there's everything. I'm just going to talk about the X has to apply to both of them, and between any two symbols, you can have multiplication. So let's have a look what's going on. The X has to be multiplied by that X, so that gives us an X squared. The X has to be multiplied by that 3, and that's a 3X. Now, a lot of people are okay with this without the other methods. But let's just talk about, we've finished the X, now we'll apply the 2. The 2 is going to apply to that X, and we get a 2X. And the 2 is going to apply to that 3, so it's 2 times 3 is 6. And we're going, what have we got? We've ended up with the 2 and the 3, the 2 and the 3 multiplied into that number there, which we call the constant. So where does the constant come from? It comes from that number multiplied by that number. Where did the X squared come from? It comes from that X multiplied by that X. Now here's the tricky one. If I collect those like terms there, I've got an X squared plus a 5X plus a 6. And we go, where did the 5 come from? It came from the 2 and the 3. Of course, it's 3X and 2X becomes the 5X. So the 6 comes from what we multiply the two numbers by, and the 5 came from the addition of those two numbers. So let's have a look at what we've got. If we turn around and we say, let's factorise, which is the fancy word for reverse the process. I'm not going to write down reverse the process. But factorise actually means to put a multiplication into the question. So the question as it starts, say we call this number 1, x squared plus 5x plus 6. We've got addition everywhere. We've got all these terms, and we want to connect it all together somehow with a multiplication. So if we reverse this process and we turn it into two brackets, what we've done is we put a multiplication into the question. That powers a lot of things. That means we can work out solutions to quadratic equations. We can find out where parabolas cross the x-axis. You might not have learned about them as yet, but there's a lot of things you can do. It's also about simplifying more complicated fractions. Lots of uses for it. Now we know the x squared has to come from an x and an x. Now one simple thing about it for a moment, if everything's positive, they've both got to be plus. Now I'm going to have a look at this and write the way my brain's thought for a long time, and I've taught lots of people. We need to get two numbers that multiply to 6. Now we knew we had the 2 and the 3 multiplied to 6. I used to write up here starting with 1, that could be 1 and 6, and then after 1 comes 2, which is 2 and 3. I've had classes that I've taught this with, and I've given them numbers like 63, and they didn't know that it was 7 9s are 63. But if they go through the process of putting 1 first, and I call it its partner, put 2 second and put its partner, and you see it has to be one of those two options. Now the last question is, which of the two numbers we've got here and up to 5? So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to 6, which can only be that, and they add to 5. Now, by the way, if that was a 4, we can't use this method. So this method only works on some situations, and then we need other ways of calculating it when it turns out not to be the correct number. Let's have a look at it then. 1 plus 6 will be 7. So you could talk about 1 plus 6 equals 7. And you could talk about 2 plus 3 equals 5. And which of those is correct? We were looking for a 5. That means that has to be a 2, and that has to be a 3. So what happens though if I turn them both into subtractions? Let's put them in red to make it a bit more obvious. Because people get the hang of it pretty quickly, but then they go, I don't understand what's happening when it's negatives. So that'll still be an x squared, but this one here is an x multiplied by a minus 3, so that'll be a minus 3x. And this is a minus 2 times by x, that ends up being a minus 2x. So instead of getting a plus 5x, in this case we're going to get a minus 5x. So if I came along with another question that said x squared minus 5x plus 6, we know it's going to be two brackets. We know that x's have to come from an x and an x. We know the 6 has to come from either a 1 and a 6 or a 2 and a 3. And you know they have to, well, let's go talk about what it is. They're still going to add, the two numbers themselves are going to add to 5, but we're actually doing -2 and -3. So if you really want it here, you can look at it and you go 2 negatives become a positive. So 2 negatives become a positive. So we know because of that positive there, that they're both, and with that minus there, it's going to be 2 negatives. I always talk about this means that they're the same sign. So if they're the same sign, they're either going to be 2 additions, 2 positives, or they're going to be 2 negatives, 2 subtractions. So if you wanted to, some people will write that it could be -1 by -6 and -2 by -3. Once you get the hang of it, I don't think of the minuses. I just do the calculations. The two numbers that added to 5, and I ignore the negative. So let's have a look what it is. So that would be a -1 -7, so it's -1 -6 I mean, which is -7. And it's a -2 -3, which is a -5. Now some of you will switch off and go, I've got the hang of it, I know what I'm doing now. Thanks for the help. So let's have a look which one it was. It's that one, -5 is there, -5 there, so it's a -2 and -3. Now a lot of people are okay there, but one case further, let's go further. What if one of these was subtract and what if one of them was an add? What's that going to do to the question now? I hope it doesn't get too confusing. X times the x is the x squared, x times the 3, the +3, so that's a +3x. Now -2 times x is still -2x. Now here's the big one. -2 multiplied by a +3 is a -6 or a -6. So let's change this one here. 3x minus the 2x is 1x. So I've got plus a 1x. I don't have to write the 1, and that's a -6. So if I put, oops, what did I do that for? That was a bit strange. So that's a -6. So if I made question number 3 and it said x squared plus x minus 6, I know it's still going to be an x and an x. I know it still has to be either a 1 and a 6 or a 2 and a 3. But in this case though, they're not the same sign. So a plus there meant the same sign, they're both positive. Plus there meant the same sign, they're both negative. So a minus there means they're different signs. So I do write that in for a lot of people. They're different signs. So one has to be a positive and one has to be a negative. So I can go to these now. I can put that as a positive, that as a negative. I can write that as a negative and that as a positive. Now some of you will be okay now. You can write that as a positive, that's a negative, or you can write that's a negative and that's a positive. Now a lot of this can be simplified once you're used to it, but we're not there at the moment. Let's keep going with it. So that one would add up to -5, we want +1. That one would add up to, you see here, +2 -3. And I should write it separate and go, that's 2 minus 3 is a -1. So that's wrong, that one's wrong. I ignored that one for a moment. I went to this one because I know it's going to be -2 plus 3 equals 1. Or you can go 3 take 2 equals 1. So that gives us the positive one that we're looking for here, the positive one. So we know it's going to be a -2 and a +3. Now, I can give you the shortcut. When there are different signs, the bigger one of the two numbers will have that sign. When they're different signs, so we know it's either a 1 and a 6. So let's go back and simplify that. I'm just going to write it as, I know it's going to be a 2 times, a 1 times a 6 or a 2 times a 3. It has to be one of those. So let's have a look at it. I'm laughing about it, sorry. The 6 here has to be the 1 and the 6, 2 and 3. One of them has to be negative, and you go, the bigger one gets that sign. So how much bigger is 6 than 1? It's 5. How much bigger is 3 than 2? It's 1. So then you know that the 3 is going to get the positive and the 2 is going to get the negative. I don't know if that works for people's brains. It gets easier as you do it. I might do one more to make sure, get people to understand what's going on. So the plus went with the 3 and the minus went with the 2. So if I come along and I make one more, x squared, let's go a little bit crazy, -12. This is where people come unstuck. You know it has to be an x and an x. Now what's the possibilities? Always start with 1 and keep saying it, but people don't do it. Could be a 1 and a 12. After 1 comes 2, could be a 2 and its partner 6. After 2 comes 3, 3 and its partner 4. Now you might notice that when these numbers are close to each other, we've finished all the possibilities. So if I had a ridiculous number, It's pretty quick as long as you go 1, 2, 3. Let's have a look at which of it. What does that mean? It means that they're different signs. So they're different. Don't write the whole word if you can read it. They're different. That means they're different. That means one is negative and one is positive. And we talk about they need a difference of -1. So a difference, that doesn't have a difference of -1. If you had $12 and I had $1, you'd have a difference of 11. If you had $6 and I had 2, we'd have a difference of 4. If you had $4 and I had 3, we have a difference of 1. So it has to be this answer here. And the bigger one gets that sign. The bigger one gets that sign. So we have a minus with a 4 and a plus with a 3. And maybe that's pretty good and you're okay with it. That's not too much of a problem. Oh, I hope it helps. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. 11. Wow, that's not what I expected.